The year is 2005. I'm 10 years old, and my dad is telling me a story. He knows I love playing video games, especially adventure RPGs like Final Fantasy. He tells me about he used to play a game in college that was similar, but it wasn't a video game, it was played using pen, paper, and dice. This story would change my life forever. My dad has always been sort of my nerdy best friend at home. You know, when he was a kid, he had the Atari and the first Nintendo Entertainment System, and he always played board games, and most importantly to the story, tabletop role-playing games, primarily Dungeons and Dragons. When I was 10 years old, he told me all about it, how he and his friends would stay up late into the night, and he played his Cleric of Bacchus. It was a little bit of Homebrew, where his cleric could only cast their spells when he was drunk, so he would basically have to be drunk at all hours of the day, just in case combat came up, and I thought that was the most hilarious and creative idea I'd ever heard. Now, I had some context for all of this because I'd played some D&D based games like Baldur's Gate and Dark Alliance. Sure, I was young and I'd never even seen a player's handbook, but I had the context for the world, what a cleric was, and of course, what being drunk was. And all that together painted a picture, a vivid picture in my head that I had really wanted to recreate. So at some point, I can't remember if I asked or if it was my dad's idea, but my dad bought us the whatever early 2000s edition of GURPS, the General Universal Role-Playing System. He told me and my older brothers that he was going to sit us down and teach us how to play a TTRPG at some point. And that day never came. 5 or so years passed, and that book was just gathering dust on a bookshelf in the basement. Now, I was a video game playing kid who didn't like reading, so I never took it upon myself to take the book out and read it, and I think even if I did once or twice, I realized how big it was and how much information was on the pages that I just put it back. It wasn't until I was a little bit older that I learned that my mom told my dad not to teach us. My mom is a pretty serious Christian, and while I don't dock her for her beliefs, they don't exactly line up with mine. I still love her, obviously she's my mother, and I wouldn't change her for the world. But at the end of the day, she was the reason why I didn't get into these games at a younger age. I would not play my first session of Dungeons and Dragons until I was a 17-year-old senior in high school. At the time, I was dating my girlfriend, who shall remain nameless because privacy, why do you care? And she invited me over to her house with a few of her friends to play a game of Dungeons and Dragons. This was so exciting to me. I got to spend time with my girlfriend and do something that I'd only been dreaming about for 6 years. That sounded perfect. So I went over, and the GM happened to be this guy. I honestly don't even remember his name, but what I do remember is he had a very heavy crush on my girlfriend. So this GM, consciously or not, I think he took this out on me in the game. We played as captives on a pirate ship. We started with no gear. We were level 1, and we basically just had to do chores like swabbing the deck, fishing, and stuff like that. And I remember not rolling super bad, or even really rolling half the time, but my character would get beat up, things would go horribly wrong, he would fail tasks, and everyone else would be fine. And even in our first combat, I was playing a monk. I believe every single one of the 3 enemy NPCs all attacked me. Now, this was like a decade ago. I don't remember all the details. Maybe I was being a butt munch and made things hard on them. Who knows? It was a long time ago. But basically, my first session of D&D involved my character being beaten and abused throughout the session, and then us going home. That's all I really remember. I don't even remember what the other players were like. What I do remember in vivid detail is sitting down either at home or in the lunchroom with my friends and playing D&D ? This was a system we came up with ourselves. We all wanted to play D&D, but none of us owned the books, none of us knew how to play, and none of us had money, and we didn't really use YouTube all that much for tutorials at the time. So you know what we did? We grabbed a single 20-sided dice. We would say, here's the scene, you're all playing yourselves, what do you do? So it'd be like, it's the post-apocalypse and you're all in the middle of a busy city. There's zombies everywhere. What do you do? Oh, I stabbed the nearest zombie. You roll the dice. Oh, you rolled a 17. You pick up a nearby hammer and cave its skull in. Cool. And we just played. We just played and did stuff with a single D20. There's no character sheets. There's no hit points or attack bonuses. It's just luck on your side. And it was so damn fun. It was so fun that on rare occasions I still play it to this day. We played it at Gen Con. Granted, me and my entire friend group were incredibly intoxicated after a pedal and drink tour in Indiana, but we were all coherent enough to roll a d20 and see what happens, and it's just stupid fun. This is my earliest memory I have of falling in love with tabletop role-playing, that this is a story that has never existed before, and we're all telling it together. Sure, I'm describing the world, but they're all describing their characters and what they want to do, and it was great. It actually got a nickname known as G&G&D, because my high school was G&G, which is similar to D&D. So we went with G&G&D, and I still refer to it to that as to this day. Now cut to college. I'm with my now 8 years later girlfriend, however we just started dating, and she invites me along to her Thursday night Pathfinder game. I think this is awesome. I haven't had a chance to play D&D since high school, and I really, really want to. So I go. It's a little complicated to learn the rules. Learning Pathfinder with no real prior experience isn't super easy. I tried to make a fighter that dual-wielded tower shields, and my GM said, that probably won't work, you should do something else. So I remember changing and rolling up a Skald, because I like to be unique, and I don't think I ever got a chance to play that character. Whatever happened with that campaign, that one ended before I was able to play a session. I joined up for at least 4 or 5 other sessions of Pathfinder, but I don't remember much about them. I know there was a campaign that was fairy tale themed. I remember hearing from my girlfriend what happened in some sessions that I wasn't there for, but I couldn't tell you what character I played, what they did, anything like that. I just remember this was sort of my gateway back in after about a year off from my high school gaming. Enter my dorm room friends, 2 of which I still talk to today, and you can actually find them over on Table Talk Discussion and Discourse. Both Alejo and Aiden are still really close personal friends of mine who I play with on a near weekly basis. We started a weekly campaign, or for more clarity, they started a weekly campaign that I joined about 3 or 4 sessions in and played all the time. Now, I had theater, and there were some times that my theater rehearsal would overlap, so I would miss sessions, but overall, I remember it to this day still being one of the most creative and insane campaigns I've ever played in. The big bad evil guy was the Muffin Man. The Muffin Man who lives on Dreary Lane, and Dreary Lane happened to be the battleground for our final boss fight. It was wild. I played a dwarf. He was good, but he worshipped Vecna, but Vecna had tricked him into thinking she was a good goddess. It was hilarious. Soon after that, I dropped out of college. I dropped out because a lot of what was happening in the theater program wasn't great. One of the 3 actual acting professors had unfortunately passed away, and the other 2 did not really mesh with what I wanted to do, which was musical theater. The other 2 are much more classically training focused, and the rest of the teachers were all backstage, which I just had no interest in. So I made the choice after a lot of deliberation to drop out, get a job. Me and my girlfriend moved in together, and I just sort of started living life. I didn't play D&D again for a little bit. I want to say it was another year and a half or so. It wasn't until I moved down to Massachusetts into a new place when me and my friends decided, hey, let's get a game going. And this was like prime of my gaming career. Enter playing 3 sessions a week for 5 hours a session. Sure, they were all online because none of us lived near each other, but they were so fun. We played some 3.5, we played a little bit of 5e, but the one that sticks in my memory the most was my game that I GM'd using only the rules cyclopedia. This is an incredibly simplified rule set of D&D, and we decided to play through it without changing a single rule. We were doing everything by the book, including how it told you to make a character. So when you made a character, you rolled 3d6, that's your strength. 3d6, that's your dex. Do that all the way down. Once you have your stats, then you pick a class. And that's why our magic user had 6 constitution. Things didn't end well for him. That game ran for a solid half year, and again, playing sometimes 2 or 3 times a week. Sometimes we'd skip a week just because schedules didn't line up, but we played that game so much. I believe we got to 8th or 9th level before things just fell apart schedule-wise. About another 6-month hiatus happens where, I talk about D&D with people, but life got busy. I didn't have time for games. And that's when me and my friends decided to start playing another weekly game, a lot more organized every single Thursday to this day. We've been playing a 3.5 game called Devils and Dice. And in fact, you can see the entire series linked in the description because we've recorded every single episode of it. Now, it's not like a super massive, high-quality Critical Role style game, but it is a documentation of our entire game, which it's been long enough that I kind of just thinking about it makes me excited. As long as YouTube doesn't crash and burn somehow, 20 years from now, I could relive this campaign. It's still going. It hasn't even ended yet. And there are some large breaks. There are times when we have to take weeks off. There was some personal events that caused us to take 2 months off. But the game has still been going for over 2 years. Around that same time, a little bit after we started, Pathfinder 2nd Edition had come out, and I had actually just recently made an April Fool's style video. I think this video might still be public on my old YouTube channel, but I made a video saying yeah, you should never let your players roll dice, because they're all cheaters. The end. It was hilarious. I posted it to a D&D subreddit and got so many angry comments. It was hilarious. But what this video did was give me the confidence to talk about role-playing games. I had never made a video about role-playing games. I had mentioned it on live streams. I was a live streamer for a while. That's for a different video. But this was the first time I'd ever made a video about tabletop role-playing games. And it was D&D 5e focused, but people watched. This channel didn't even have a following, and it got a couple hundred views, and that was like, wow, that's cool. And I noticed Pathfinder 2nd Edition had just came out, and I said, I played a little bit of Pathfinder when I was in college and a little bit after, so I'll take a look at it. And I liked what I saw. And I noticed there's nowhere on YouTube that's really talking in heavy detail about PF2, at least not a lot. There was how it's played, there was Black Dragon Gaming, but no one was like, here's the Alchemist, here's how you play it. Here's the Barbarian, here's how you play it. So I decided I could do that. I should do that. And I did that. And that led me to where I am today, playing 4 sessions a week, give or take, depending on cancellations, and tabletop role-playing games being one of the most powerful forces in my entire life. And really all thanks to that story my dad told me when I was just 10 years old. Sure, maybe I would have gotten here through some other means if he never told me about it, but I really like thinking of that as the determining factor, the one push that set this whole wheel in motion. TTRPGs mean so much to me. More than anything, really, they're an escape. Not just from life. It's nice to have an escape from life, but video games do that for me, too. No, they're a different kind of escape, especially when I'm GMing. When I GM, I don't just get to escape from the world into the game, I get to escape from my brain. I know this won't make sense to a lot of you, but I think it'll make a ton of sense to some of you. My brain is weird. I don't know if I'm confident enough to call myself neurodivergent. I don't know where the line is. I've never been tested. But my brain, it's kind of scrambled. I struggle to organize things. I struggle to remember things. I hyper-focus on certain things while others fade into the background. But when I'm GMing, the game is the only thing that matters. I am focused on what's about to happen next. I'm focused on what my players are doing and planning something ahead of time. I'm thinking about different character motivations and player character backstories that I could slide in through some improv additions to make this session more engaging. I'm thinking about whether they're having fun. I'm thinking about whether I'm having fun. And all of these thoughts distract me from the day-to-day chaos inside my head. More than just being a story to tell, more than just being a memory to make, which are equally great. You know, I love telling these stories, and I love just thinking back on them and remembering them and talking about D&D with new people and saying, oh, this one time our fighter got his ear blasted off by an ice dragon. It was super cool. But more than anything, even more than the escape, tabletop RPGs are so special to me because they're an excuse to spend time with people. And I feel like we live in a world where it's really hard to find time. And this is just something I'm sort of learning as I grow up. You know, I'm 27. And I'm to the point where, you know, all my close friends have close to full-time jobs. We all live across the country. You know, we have partners, and we have to go by their schedules as well as family and holidays and vacations. But finding reliable time, scheduling 3 hours a week to hang out together, even if it's just in a voice call, even if nothing even gets done in the campaign, 3 hours with the most important people in my life. Those are the moments. That's role-playing to me. It's not the mechanics. It's not even really the story. It's the people I get to tell the story with. Because without the people, there's no game. Without the people, you're just by yourself. And the last few years have really amplified that loneliness. You know, I work from home. Ever since I started doing YouTube full time, I've worked from home. So, especially through the heat of quarantine, I was lucky if I saw 2 or 3 people a week. With those weekly sessions with my best friends. They meant everything to me. So, that's what TTRPGs are about. They're about people. And all the people from my high school girlfriend and her friends, to my now girlfriend and her friends, to my high school friends, to my college friends, to the people I've met doing YouTube, to my parents. It's just about them. Always has been and always will be. Thanks.